Okay, holy magic. Now in holy magic there's no cost to your own health. You don't have to do an incredible discipline because you're not going to produce the powers for manifestation out of yourself, like magic proper. And distinct from sorcery, you're not going to open yourself up to having the powers taken out of you by beings who then produce the manifestation. And the most typical kinds of holy magic which everyone practices is called prayer. Now if you were to study Barden's ceremonial magic, you'd be able to look at the Mass and you will see that the Mass is a gigantic bit of ceremonial magic. And the practices of Wicca, are ceremonial magic. So ceremonial magic is everywhere, and Christ had a little bit to say about that in the Sermon on the Mount when he taught about prayer. And if you read my or watch my videos on the coming metamorphosis of Christianity, you'll find a very exact description in the one on saving the Catholic religion from the Roman Church through deepening our understanding of the third Fatima prophecy. A description of prayer in the sense of what Christ taught in the Sermon on the Mount. And it's about a way in which to have, in a scientific, replicatable fashion, contact with the spiritual world through prayer. Now, a lot of people who practice prayer today in the Christian religion don't actually understand what Christ said, and I'm not going to go into that here because I developed that elsewhere, but basically I want to talk sort of in general about holy magic. And of course, in holy magic, there is a correlation between manifestations and your purity, you might say. And the examples of this are everywhere, I talked earlier about St. Teresa of Avila floating up in the air, the nuns who survive with just water and the host. Then you have the young girls throughout the history of Catholicism that have had appearances from Mary, and how the mother manifests her communion with us on the earth through beings whose purity allows her to appear to them directly. And sometimes they have this purity naturally, and sometimes they have it through a life devoted to prayer, and sometimes these young girls become nuns because they understand that holy magic exists. They don't particularly have to call it that. We're just calling it from these studies of wizardry or wisdom, which I'm going through this problem of powers. Straight talk about the ambiguity of seeking powers. Okay. So what's involved here? Well, there's a lot of stuff involved in holy magic, and all kinds of things happen. At the beginning, I called it, when I have this discussion, I called it petition and grace. Prayer is a petition. We ask for the operation of holy magic to occur. Grace is the manifestation by higher beings of the forces that bring about holy magic. Now the thing about higher beings, and this is related to the kinds of things that people do when they do prayer work, for example, when they pray for sick people, and not everybody gets well, but some seem to get well and seem to be influenced in a way by prayer. There's these studies about this that exist, and nobody understands the mechanism, although I'm about to explain it to you. And mechanism's kind of the wrong word, but there are sort of rules. And the rules are not so much like laws in the sense of laws of physics, like gravity and stuff. These are rules that are fundamentally moral in nature, and that's why I talked about purity. The more morally pure a person is, the more the nature of their contact with these higher beings can produce manifestations, and there's the significance is the selflessness of the nature of the manifestation. A lot of people pray for themselves, and you'll find that discussion in my book on saving the Catholic religion, in my videos on saving the Catholic religion. But here let's just talk about what goes on from the standpoint of the higher beings. Okay? They have a standpoint. How do you know that standpoint? Well, the more contact you have with them, the more you begin to see the world the way they see it, because when you have contact with them, they leave traces of their own nature in your nature. Your nature becomes more than it was before because you've immersed yourself in them. Petition and grace. This is an act of grace that they give you this. So let's say we have a bunch of people praying for a bunch of sick people, and some of them get better and some of them don't. Well, the beings of the higher worlds know more about the individuals you're praying for and who you are than you do. They see the totality of things in a way that we can't imagine. And it's from that total point of view that the judgments are made about whether or not the petition can be met with the act of grace, which changes the health conditions of the person prayed for. Now, one of the things we have in Christianity is the idea, contrary to the idea in the East, that there's no karma and reincarnation. We just have one life. Now, the Bible doesn't actually say that. It says a lot of other things, and there's implications, and institutional Christian religion doesn't like the idea of repeated earth lives, and there's a lot of justification for Western culture having the particular idea that you only go around once, whether it's actually true or not. Because a lot of the ideas that we have about the world are important to our development in that lifetime, that we have that idea. So to live a lifetime in which your attitude is that I only got this once results in you behaving in a different way, and it's one of the things that we can understand, the differences between the culture of the East and the culture of the West. In the culture of the East, for example, you talk to Vietnam veterans, and they'll talk about one of the puzzles of the war for them was the attitude of the unimportance of life to the Vietnamese people that they met. And it was different from the way they were as a Westerner. And that's part of the East, and of course it's a complicated problem. I'm just kind of lifting a little corner of it and saying, if you're of the cultural East, you tend to have already the idea of reincarnation. And so getting off this veil of tears is not so much a problem, or letting your kid, be killed because of whatever, and all of these kinds of things you can find in the stories of the soldiers that went to Vietnam, because they didn't understand it, because they came from a point of view in which you've only got one life, and they were with a bunch of people who believed you got many lives. And the way you lived your life is different according to whether or not you have these ideas. And there's a lot of things like that in the world. If you're going to be wise, you need to understand them.